What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by F&C. I'm your host, Chris Meaney. Thanks, as always, for taking the time to hang out on this Thursday. Lots to get to on what is episode 13 of Mean Streets, the Dan Marino, Kurt Warner, TJ Yates episode. TJ Yates in the same sentence as Dan Marino and Kurt Warner? What the heck am I smoking? Just for you football junkies out there, you NFL trivia junkies out there, TJ Yates, the first Texans quarterback to win a playoff game. I'm sure it'll never come up, but now you know. Steve Nash, Mark Jackson, Wilt Chamberlain, James Harden. James Harden reportedly turned down a 2-year contract worth over $100 million. What? Actually, don't judge him for this. He's going to get paid regardless. He's one of the best basketball players in the game today. If he wants to leave Houston, he wants to leave Houston. I'd like to see him with the Nets, kind of reunite with Kevin Durant. I think that'd be pretty cool. Bring back Ibaka. Heck, trade Westbrook there too. Have the whole crew back together. But yeah, it's looking like Harden's days in Houston are certainly numbered. I was going to rock my Wilt Chamberlain Kansas Jayhawks tee today, but there's a ton of holes in that. So that probably wouldn't go over with the big man, Kevin Adams. So I decided not to go that route. Obviously, I'm going to give some love to the Canadian Steve Nash, former Mav. Mark Jackson, love this guy as a commentator. I mean, a great basketball player, could really dish the ball, was one of the best passers of all time, in my opinion. But, not a great coach. Went to the Warriors, couldn't get it done. They bring in Steve Kerr, win all kinds of championships and records and yada, yada. But for Mark Jackson, I just really enjoy him on the broadcast. Like, hand down, man down. Mama, there goes that man. And then you got Breen in there. Bang! Bang! It's great. And, the grown man move. Probably my favorite is when he comes down on a player when, even LeBron. If LeBron, has a bad play, he says, you're better than that. You're better than that. So Mark Jackson gets some love here on the show today. Pavel Datsyuk, Teemu Selanne, and Matt Sundin for my Leaf fans out there. Roberto Clemente and Manny Machado, two great baseball players. Manny Machado, one of the best in my opinion, just with the bat and the glove. But a lot of great wide receivers here. And I will dedicate this episode to Michael Thomas, but a lot of great wide receivers wearing 1-3, Odell Beckham Jr., Mike Evans, Keenan Allen. But Michael Thomas, just because I need you. You haven't done anything all year, so now's the time. Jameis Winston's your quarterback. Jameis Winston, number one in ADOT over the past couple seasons, throwing the ball down the field, but this isn't a Bruce Arians offense. Sean Payton, he's going to mix in some Taysom Hill. Heck, I don't even think he's named a starter yet. I wouldn't be shocked if he went Taysom Hill, but Hill is going to get about 10 snaps at least, some red zone touches, he's going to carry the rock. Probably going to catch a pass from Jameis. I think Jameis is the guy. I'm hoping that this move at quarterback is a good one for Michael Thomas, who only has played, 3 games this year. Has hardly done anything all year. So I'm still holding out hope for Michael Thomas. Still holding out hope. I don't have him as ranked as a wide receiver 1 this week, though. It's the first time all year. I got him outside my top 12, but I'm still starting him. You'd have to have some pretty darn good options not to start him. But speaking of wide receivers, you still have a chance to get in on this free giveaway, FTN giveaway, an Allen Robinson signed mini helmet. I purchased it over at Pristine Auction. It's not part of this show, Mean Streets, but I appreciate everybody who has already screenshotted that they've rated, reviewed, and subscribed to this show, and they sent that DM over to me. I'm still going to put your name inside the draw. We're giving away soon. The first 50 reviews that we have, we're giving away to those first 50. So you're going to have a 1 in 50 chance to get this Allen Robinson signed mini helmet. Love it. Love the orange Sharpie there. The Bears stink, but Allen Robinson's a G. So you still have time to get in on this. What I'm asking you to do, and the link to FTN Fabcast, a show that I host with Maddie Wood. It's an audio show every Tuesday. It's a waiver wire show. We dig deep, but we really do touch on a lot of players there. So even if you aren't playing in deep, high stake leagues like Maddie does, you still hopefully will get something out of it. Last week we talked at length about Josh Reynolds. It worked out. It doesn't always work out. Jacoby Myers, Josh Reynolds have worked out for us. Other ones in the past have not. We dig a little deep. So it's really for the people out there who play in like 16 team leagues or just deep rosters. But like I said, you can get a lot out of it. But if you want this Allen Robinson signed helmet, or if you have somebody in your family that's a Bears fan, or Christmas is around the corner, you're looking for a gift, it's simple. All you have to do is rate, review, subscribe. You can, your review could be Chris is a dink, still like the show. Thanks for the opportunity to win the helmet. I'll accept that. So screenshot a picture subscribing to FTN Fabcast. FTN Fabcast. It's this descriptions in the details here of the show, the link rather. So rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars. Would really appreciate it. Send that Meaney's a Dink message, and away you go. You'll be in the draw. And we're giving away that soon. Very, very soon. So just a handful of more screenshots, and away we go. So you can either DM me at Chris Meaney on Twitter, at _MattyWood_ on Twitter, or you can email that to me, MeanStreetsEP13 @gmail.com. Again, FTN Fabcast. I have a giveaway on the show next week. Another signed football helmet from a rookie wide receiver. Spoiler alert. All right. News, notes, injuries, props for tonight's game, trade deadline, stats, rankings, all that stuff. Going to roll through this pretty quickly before the Thursday night football game. Really looking forward to this Seahawks and Arizona game. Would we have 71 points last time in week 7? That OT thriller. We could get to 80 today. 80's pushing it, but man, would anybody be shocked? No, I'm really looking forward to this football game. I know I've talked at length about Kyler Murray all year and selfishly talking about him because I own him in a few leagues, but this is fun football. Sometimes these Thursday night games are hard to get up for. I'm sure it's hard to get up for some of these players. It's hard for the players to get up for some of these games as well in the short turnaround week and yada yada. But we got 2 great quarterbacks in Russ and Kyler going toe to toe tonight, and a lot's on the line. It's a 3-way tie in that division as well. So this is a huge football game to say the least. And with fantasy football playoffs around the corner, we need our guys to show up. So I have some picks and some props for this game, but I really wanted to give a shout out to the Fantasy Happy Hour, 6:45 Eastern with Brad Evans, Elliot Chris, and Jeff Ratcliffe. It's the best show in the biz. I love when those 3 get together. They always preview the Thursday night football game. And if you don't catch it live, you can go back and watch it afterwards as well, as long as you're subscribed over at ftnfantasy.com. And by the way, $19 the rest of the way. You're going to get rankings for myself, Brad Evans, Jeff Ratcliffe, all of their content, all the season-long content, exclusive chats. I did one today for an hour. The chat was active. So $20 for the rest of the way. Really going to hopefully help you out through the fantasy football playoffs. Those guys do chats too, Ratcliffe and Evans. So it's not just going to be me. You're going to get some stuff from, better analysts. So head on over there. Plus, if you use the promo code Meaney, you're going to get even a better discount. So it's going to be, $16 for you. It's it doesn't get much better than that. I don't really know what else to say. But 6:45 Eastern time, check out those 3. You can watch the replay. And then 7:30 Eastern time, FTN at prime time with Elliot Chris and David Jones, who's probably the best showdown player in the game. This guy's won a ton of money in showdowns, and it's such an interesting slate. We got to look for some value somewhere. There's just so many intriguing options tonight. So those guys will certainly help you out. One news note item to get to for this game. A lot of news items have filtered through here over the past couple hours, but one in particular for tonight's Chris Carson foot, unlikely going to play. And if you follow my guy Jeff Ratcliffe on Twitter, which I'm sure you follow Jeff Ratcliffe on Twitter. I mean, if you're listening to the show and you're watching the show and you follow me on Twitter, you follow Jeff Ratcliffe on Twitter. But just in case you don't, you need to, at Jeff Ratcliffe. He tweeted out something pretty cool today that, very intriguing, because he was saying in regards to tonight's game that Alex Collins is currently on Seattle's practice squad. He was reverted there on Monday. So really what that means is the Seahawks would need to sign Alex Collins to a contract since he's already been promoted twice to the 53-man roster. So Jeff saying in his tweet that would subject him to waivers before he could rejoin the practice squad if they went that route. So Seattle has Bo Scarborough currently on the practice squad, but that just means it's going to be the Carlos Hyde, a little bit of DJ Dallas. I don't think Bo Scarborough is going to get involved. So it's going to be the Hyde show tonight. And I have him ranked as a top 25 running back. My rankings, again, can be found at ftnfantasy.com. Use that promo code. You get in on that wicked deal that we have for the rest of the season. I got him at 25, just behind Kenyon Drake, J.D. McKissick, Ronald Jones, Melvin Gordon, and I really could probably get behind Hyde over Gordon. Gordon has been awful, but it's a good matchup against Miami, and then Salvon Ahmad is ahead of Hyde as well. But Hyde could be a sneaky little play, which brings me to a couple props that I have for today. I won't give them all away because I really want you guys to check out ftnbets.com. Use the promo code Meaney. Everybody is absolutely killing it over there. Kevin Adams is up 50 units. He had an unbelievable week 10. My week 10, not so hot. I dropped a few, looking to bounce back here today, and let's start strong here on Thursday. I got Carlos Hyde. There's a prop there, 15.5. I'm not going to touch that one, but I got over 10.5 receiving yards. I don't know if he's going to get 15 carries, but I think he can catch a couple balls. The last time he played was against Arizona. Chris Carson left. Hyde ended up getting 15 carries. He had 4 targets, 3 catches. people don't view him as a big pass catcher, but he did it in San Fran one year. He had 50 plus grabs. So I think, one or two catches, he gets this over 10 yards. It's a 57 point total. I like a lot of overs, but Hyde is definitely one that it's not for everybody. It's a little risky, but one that I do like. And I'm not going to give all of these away, but I'm going to give a couple on this show. Chase Edmonds under 9.5 rushing yards, and Chase Edmonds under 9.5 rushing attempts. It's not his backfield anymore. It's Kenyon Drake's. And Kenyon Drake has had at least 13 carries in every single game. So I'm going to take the over Kenyon Drake rushing attempts, 12.5. And I'm going to take the under 9.5 rushing attempts for Chase Edmonds. But I'm going to take Edmonds over on catches, 2.5, and over on receiving yards, 19.5. So my favorite of all of those is probably Edmonds, because I can't see him getting 10 carries. The only way he gets 10 carries is if Drake gets hurt again. This is not going to happen. Even last week, Drake fumbled the ball. He wasn't even 100%, and he still had a ton of carries in the game and over 100 yards rushing. So he fumbled the ball last week in a tight game against Buffalo, and then the very next drive, Cliff Kingsbury went right back to him. So Drake is that guy that's going to, Edmonds could have the better fantasy day. He could catch 5 or 6 balls, find the end zone receiving touchdown. I don't think anybody should be shocked if Edmonds has the better day. But Edmonds is not going to be the guy to get 10 carries. Drake is going to be the guy to get all those carries. So that's it for my props. A ton more over at ftnbets.com from the entire crew. But again, if you check out Fantasy Happy Hour with Jeff Ratcliffe, Brad Evans, and Elliot Chris at 6:45 Eastern Time, you are going to get all the goods because they roll through all the props and their picks and their favorite plays as well. It's a phenomenal show. Grab a pop, grab a tasty beverage, because you know they will, and have yourself a time. It's a phenomenal show. And then even again, a little bit deeper, as I mentioned, Chris and Jones taking a look at the matchup tonight, showdown slate for DFS purposes. There's just all kinds of beauties in there. So that's the news note I wanted to start off with Chris Carson rather. So another week without Chris Carson. Big bummer. Again, really looking forward to that game. A lot has come through here over the past hour. Going to rapid fire through this. Catch the weekend show. We'll have a better feel with practice reports on Friday. But as of today, Alvin Kamara missed practice with a foot injury. Keep an eye on that. Kamara owners need to have Latavius Murray. It's the same what I've been telling you. Sanders owners need to have Boston Scott. Mixon owners need to have Giovanni Bernard. CMC should have had Mike Davis. It's just the way it is. Alexander Madison needs to have, if you have Cook, you need to have Madison. You just need to. Coming into the playoffs, you need to have your investments protected in case any of these guys go down. If Kamara goes down, Latavius Murray is a rock-solid top 15 running back in that offense, even without Drew Brees there, because they may just even run the ball a little bit more if Jameis continues to turn it over. I say continue. He hasn't had a shot yet. I'm already counting him out. Let's go, Jameis. I'm counting on you tonight or this weekend. So Kamara, but the silver lining here is that Kamara's missed a couple practices in the past, over the past couple of weeks with a foot injury. So he could play in this matchup. Maybe they're just resting him a little bit. Joe Mixon, unlikely to play again. So it could be another Giovanni Bernard game. I don't think he's a top 12 back, where I've had him ranked as a top 12 back a couple times where Mixon's been out. I think he's more of a top 15, 16 back. PPR leagues for sure. Washington's a tough defense. They've been great all year. DeAndre Swift is the big one. He just popped up today, no practice because of a concussion. That means he's likely out. He's not going to play. And it's too bad because he was certainly trending up in this offense. Matt Patricia was starting to give him all the touches. He just came off a game where he had a career high carries and opportunities and snap percentage. And he's had about 5 targets in every single game. So looking like no Swift, which is a big bummer. I had him ranked as a borderline top 5 running back this week against Carolina. I think you need to go get Adrian Peterson, Kerryon Johnson. I will have AP ranked ahead of Kerryon, even though it feels like it should be Kerryon ahead of AP. He's got a higher ceiling, catch a couple passes. AP doesn't really do that, but it's AP and it's Patricia. And I think when they get down here to the goal line, it's probably going to be AP. But neither of these guys are going to be top 30 running backs for me. I don't really like either of them, but you just can't have them hanging around the waiver wire, especially if you're a Swift owner. You could be scrambling for somebody. So AP's the guy that I would grab first. I think Kerryon has the higher ceiling if you want to go that route. But AP has been phased out of this offense over the past 3 weeks, 8 or fewer carries in 3 straight games. So Kerryon hasn't done a whole lot either, but he did get a touchdown over the past couple weeks. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, another one that popped up today, no practice. Got to keep an eye on his practice report Friday. It could be the Lev Bell show. I was a little sour on Lev Bell in the last episode. I said there was no reason to start him. I didn't think that there was a reason to drop him unless you're in 8-team leagues or something like that. But we could see a Lev Bell 20-touch game in Kansas City's offense against the Las Vegas Raiders, which is a terrific matchup. A 57-point total. It's another high scoring game this weekend too. So let's double check to see if Bell's out there. You gotta also have somebody planned because that's Sunday night. So you really need to have some backup plans there just in case he can't go. With the Monday night game being the Rams and the Bucks, there's really not a whole lot there. I don't think Fournette's hanging around the waiver wire. Malcolm Brown potentially. You don't want to take a zero, but you need to have a backup plan. Hopefully we just hear something on Friday. If Clyde Edwards-Helaire practices on a Friday, he's likely a go. Matt Breida is going to play, but I still think the backfield belongs to Salvon Ahmad. Quickly just going to roll through what Ahmad did. I'm sure you know already just looking at it, but one of the articles that I write on Monday, just stats to know, and I was really just looking a little bit deeper here as I bring it up with Ahmad. He had basically all the touches out of the backfield. Patrick Laird played 10 snaps, and DeAndre Washington, who was acquired a couple weeks ago, did nothing. He had 4 snaps and 2 touches. So he was impressive too. Ahmad, that is, 85 rushing yards on 21 carries. He had just had the 1 target, so he's not going to be a big player in the passing game. Jordan Howard is released, and Breida has not really shown us a whole lot this year. Gaskin took over. So I think when Breida comes in and he's active, I think he's that third down guy. Maybe he catches a couple passes. Maybe he ends up with 4 or 5 carries. But I think Ahmad has earned himself another, maybe 15 carries. And decent offensive line. They're playing well. Gaskin has been good when he's active. So he could get another 20 touches against Denver. And, it's a decent matchup. And, yeah, I would just start Ahmad over Breida, even though I think, I believe in Breida's talent a little bit more than Ahmad, but knowing what he just did in his very last start, played 44 or 58 snaps, that's the way that I would lean there. But it looks like Breida is going to play in this game. JaMychal Hasty, broken collarbone IR. I just want to bring him up because Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, and Deebo Samuel all expected to be back week 12. If you're looking for a buy low candidate, Raheem Mostert is your guy. I know most fantasy football trade deadlines have passed. I think there's a couple out there that end this week, maybe Thursday at midnight or Friday. I think Mostert could potentially be had. It's possible the owner's like, you know what? I need a running back this week. I was hoping for Carson. I was hoping for Mixon. Wow, I could be without Kamara. Wow, I'm already without Swift, so I need a back right now. You can maybe flip him and then get Mostert. Flip Ahmed and maybe somebody else. It's probably not likely to happen, but Mostert's a top 40 running back in PPR formats playing a handful of games, and he is 8th in fantasy points per game. So when he comes back, it's going to be his backfield. Tevin Coleman's going to be the pass down, third down role, catch a couple balls, but Mostert is going to be the guy there, and San Fran's going to start to get healthier, and maybe they'll make a little bit of a run in the last couple of weeks, but it will be Mostert's backfield, even though Kyle Shanahan does throw us for a loop sometimes. Austin Eckler, CMC obviously out, Justin Jackson, David Johnson, Devonta Freeman, Myles Gaskin. These guys are all out. Freeman on bye, but it's the Wayne Gallman show, as I've been saying on this episode or on the show of Mean Streets. Over to wide receivers, Devontae Adams' ankle. He missed practice today. Keep an eye on that. That could be huge. It does look like Alan Lazard is going to return to the lineup this week, but he's going to be on a pitch count. I wouldn't trust him. MVS has been really, really good. I think you could start MVS regardless. This is a tough matchup against the Colts. I think this is going to be a grind. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. You're obviously playing Adams and Jones if those guys suit up, but I wouldn't play Lazard. Calvin Ridley, foot, limited all week. Before I got on here, I saw a report that his injury is not progressing as quickly as they hoped it would. So I don't know if he's going to play, but I saw a couple videos of him running routes. So that's a positive sign anyways. Keep an eye on that situation. Again, we'll touch on it on Friday. Kenny Golladay was limited on Wednesday and then didn't practice on Thursday. Marvin Jones didn't practice on Wednesday, then was limited on Thursday. Complete mess. This Detroit and Carolina game. We could be without Teddy Bridgewater and Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford was limited. I think he plays. Teddy Bridgewater is looking unlikely with a knee injury. He couldn't do anything at practice today. So we could get PJ Walker, XFL star, Will Greer, potentially. I think it's going to be Walker. I look back at the game a few weeks ago. Who were they playing? It's slipping my mind now, but Carolina was playing somebody. I think Tampa. And Teddy Bridgewater went out. He missed some time. He got hit in the head, and it was PJ Walker who came in. So I think he's the next man up, but we'll probably get a really good feel for this on Friday. Sammy Watkins will play. Danny Amendola, hip. He was also not active at practice. John Brown is on bye, so that's good news, but dealing with an ankle injury. Laviska Shenault, hammy, not sure about him. Jack Doyle did return to practice today, so he's going to come back into the lineup. I'm not feeling anybody anymore. There's just too many of those tight ends, and Trey Burton and Mo Alley Cox and Jack Doyle. It's just a complete shit show. You know about Drew Brees already. Ribs, collapsed lung. Not going to play. Be surprised to see him the rest of the regular season. I don't think we'll see him maybe towards the very end, but I think this is going to be the Winston show. I think we're really going to get a good look at him. And, Sean Payton's creative. We're going to keep things simple for him. Turnovers have always been an issue for him. But I think you could get by starting him this week. I view him as a top 20 quarterback, especially if, you had Teddy and, you got Josh Allen on bye. You may be in a really sticky situation. I would play him. I'd play Kirk Cousins over him. Just taking a look here at my quarterback rankings just to give you a real idea of who I'd play Jameis over. I would play Jameis over Tua Tagovailoa. I really would. I play him over Ryan Tannehill against Baltimore. I play him over Phillip Rivers. I kind of like Rivers this week. Play him over Andy Dalton. I'm close. I like Andy Dalton. I really do like Andy Dalton this week. I think I like him a little bit more in DFS. I think he's a sneaky play. A good maybe second quarterback in super flex leagues. But yeah, that's all the injuries. A ton of injuries. I wanted to go over, again, we'll touch on this again tomorrow. Oh yeah, Nick Foles hurt. Chicago on bye. Drew Lock practiced today, so confident that he'll be able to play. I don't think you're starting Lock. I mean, he's had two good fantasy days, but even in Superflex leagues, you're probably not starting him. I have him ranked outside the top 25, but this is, I think, good news for Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler, who played a team high in snaps last week. So I think Lock gives them a better chance to win than anybody else that they'll throw out there. So a couple more news and notes that I wanted to get to, basically from week 10 that I think will carry over into week 11. I'll start at the top with Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones, 155 carries now. That's top 7 in all of football. And he had 23 carries, which is a week high in week 10. And I just feel like, I have been on this show and talking about Leonard Fournette. I feel like I kind of have to take the loss there, the L. Fournette only mustered 19 yards on 8 carries, 2.4 yards per pop. Was involved through the air, and I think he's going to keep that third down role. But Ronald Jones now has had a few 100-yard games. He fumbled early in that game, his very first touch, and Bruce Arians went right back to him. So I think Bruce Arians is starting to feel something here with Ronald Jones. Tough matchup this week against the Rams, but if I had to choose between one of the two, and I know there's some people out there who have both, it's Ronald Jones. So he had that big run, obviously 98 yards, which was a big part of his 192 rushing yards. But, if you take away that run, 4.2 yards per carry on his other 22, and I just mentioned Fournette 2.4. So I think Jones has RB1 upside throughout the playoffs as the Bucs played Minnesota, Atlanta, and Detroit. So between week 14 and 16, I like those spots. Damian Harris is a guy I really wanted to bring up on this show today. I like him and Jacoby Myers this week quite a bit against the Houston Texans. We'll start with Harris. He finished with a career high 22 carries, 121 rushing yards, and he only played 32 of the possible 58 snaps last week against the Baltimore Ravens. It's his third 100-yard rushing game, despite only playing 6 games this season. He has an impressive 5.5 yards per attempt. 78 rushing yards per game is what he's averaging. He's averaging 17.3 rushing attempts per game and 98 rushing yards over his last 3 games. So I know Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels, these guys can really throw us for a loop like Kyle Shanahan when it comes to running backs in New England. There's, they have a few. But I think there's 2 that we can start to trust a little bit. Rex Burkhead in PPR formats, and then Damian Harris. It's really just if they get down in games, it's going to be White and it's going to be Burkhead. But if they are in games that they can kind of control and hang around and run the rock, it's Harris. And I like this matchup this week against Houston because Harris has at least one run of 21 yards or more in 3 straight games. Why is that important? Well, the Texans have surrendered a league-high 10 runs of at least 20 yards, and a league high 3 runs of at least 40 yards and a league high 5.2 yards per carry. So he's in a really good spot to succeed this week. I like him in DFS, more so in FanDuel, where he's not going to catch a lot of passes, so you don't want to really play him on DraftKings. You get that full point for a catch. I'd like to play backs who catch on DraftKings, but in FanDuel, it's the half-point setting, so you can kind of get away with a running back who's not really going to be involved through the air. But I really like Harris. And then Jakobi Meyers is just continues to ball out week after week. Jakobi Meyers, he just does something, and I think he's kind of a sell-high candidate because I don't really like their playoff schedule. The Rams, Dolphins, and Bills, it's very tough. But at the same time, if you need to get to the playoffs, you probably want to rock him up until playoffs happen to get you there, to get to the dance. But over his last 4 weeks, 7th in targets with 35, or 37 rather, 6th in catches with 27. He's 3rd in yards, 346. He's 5th in air yards, 445. That's just the past 4 weeks. He has a league high 61% of his team's air yards over that span, a 38% target share. This is ridiculous stuff. He's leading the way all the time. Cam's only really thrown to one guy. There's a couple things to consider. Julian Edelman could come back for those fantasy football playoff weeks, and Cam hasn't thrown more than one passing touchdown since December 2nd in 2018. So there are some negatives there, and there's some positives. It's it can be a little confusing. But I think the volume speaks for itself and opportunity. So Jakobi Meyers is a top 30 play for me this week at wide receiver, and Damian Harris is a low-end RB2 for me this week. And, he probably is owned now with waivers already ran, but it's possible he's out there in shallow leagues. And like I just rattled off a ton of running backs who have, quite a few injuries. So you could be desperate. You could need somebody. And I think Harris could be an option for you. One more back to really bring up before we get to a couple trade targets out there for people. Actually, 2 more. Nick Chubb returned. Nick Chubb hadn't played since week 4. He ran for 126 yards on 19 carries. Had 1 touchdown, could have had a second. Had that nice long run. It would have been a 60-yard score. Ran out at the 1. Wanted to ice the game for his team, unlike Todd Gurley, to get the W. I'm sure fantasy owners were a little ticked off there, and it was a difference for, I'm sure, a lot of people out there in leagues where maybe they won because Chubb didn't get in, or maybe they lost because Chubb didn't get in. But either way, I thought it was very encouraging to see him get 19 carries. And Hunt also had 100 yards on the ground. It's the best 1-2 punch in all of football. And I really like this matchup this week against the Eagles. You're starting Hunt regardless, but anybody out there looking for a DFS play, I think a lot of people view the Eagles as a tough run defense because they've been so tough over the past few years. The way to attack them has always been through the air. You throw the football. They have no secondary, but since they acquired Darius Slay, their secondary has been pretty good. They've made some great plays there, but teams are starting to run on them. So what I've noticed with the Eagles so far this year is that the yards per carry mark is not high. You look at rush DVOA, they're not a top 10 or a bottom 10 rush DVOA defense. So they're kind of in the middle of the pack. So some of these numbers don't really stand out. When you're looking at DraftKings and FanDuel, you don't have the green there. It's kind of the middle of the pack. But like I said, the Eagles have really struggled to stop the run lately. They've allowed the 7th most rushing yards per game, the 3rd most rushing touchdowns, tied with Houston for the most 20-yard runs and the most 40-yard runs. So, and you know what Cleveland wants to do. They want to run the rock. They want to run the football. They can't have Baker chucking it. So I really like Chubb this week. He's kind of pricey in DFS, but I think he's worth the price. And I don't think a lot of people will go to him because of the matchup. I think that they'll just avoid it. They'll either spend up on Dalvin Cook or spend down maybe on a Damian Harris. But I really like Chubb. I think he's very interesting this week. And moving forward, obviously, you got yourself a borderline top 5 running back. And I think Kareem Hunt's in a good spot as well. I already touched on Drake, but he did outsnap Edmonds 38-36. If you're watching this show in time for tonight's game and you had 2 guys, I have both of these guys in some teams. I'm playing them both in certain spots. I kind of lean Edmonds over Drake in a full point setting, but Drake is going to get more touches than him. As I mentioned in the props, he has 13 carries, at least 13 carries in every single game. He was very efficient, 6.3 yards per attempt, had 100 yards. Edmonds was a little bit more efficient, but he had fewer carries, 8 and 56 yards. So it's just going to be a lot of Drake, and Edmonds going to get involved if it's a bit of a shootout or they're down in games and they're passing. But I have Drake slightly ahead of Edmonds for those who have both. And then I lied. A couple more players I want to bring up. Kalen Ballage, revenge against the Jets. You know he's going to go off against Adam Gase. You know it. It's going to happen. But he took the bulk of the work again this week for the Rams. He finished with 68 yards on 18 carries, added another 34 yards on 5 grabs. That's the big takeaway for me. Josh Kelly, again, every single week somebody leapfrogs Josh Kelly, whether it's Justin Jackson, Troy Pope, Kalen Ballage, next guy up. Obviously, the Rams or the Chargers are not feeling Joshua Kelly, and you probably shouldn't either. But Joshua Kelly was involved through the air a couple weeks ago, and then last week he wasn't. It was all Ballage. So I think Ballage is a top 30 running back this week. Let's see. I'll look quickly. Where do I have him? Give you a little sneak peek. I think he's going to get 20 opportunities against his former team. I got him as RB18. I got Harris as 17, Ballage as RB18, and Gio at RB19. So week 11, this is where we're at. Kalen Ballage, lock and loaded RB2. Giddy up. One more guy I wanted to bring up, J.D. McKissic. J.D. McKissic topped his 14 targets from week 9 with 15 targets last week. Nobody else had more targets than him in all of football last week. That's 37 targets for J.D. McKissic over the last 4 weeks, which ranks 11th in all of football. 11th. 5.9 targets per game behind only Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey. Alex Smith leads all quarterbacks in passing yards over the past 2 weeks, 715 yards, despite a 5.2 ADOT, which ranks 29th in all football. So he's not throwing the ball deep down the field. It's Terry McLaurin or it's a dump off to J.D. McKissic. This game against the Bengals may not be a shootout. It could be a little tighter, so it could be the Antonio Gibson show, which I expected actually to be. So McKissic probably won't get double-digit targets. But if, for whatever reason, Cincinnati gets up big in the game, J.D. McKissic is on the field, he's catching a few more balls. But I just wanted to bring him up because he's played 3 games with Alex Smith and has a 32% target share, 28.5, 35.9, and 27.2. 32% target share over the last 2 weeks for McKissic. With Alex Smith under center. I don't know. A lot of people are not buying into J.D. McKissic. Most, I think, view him as a PPR play only. But I think in a half-point setting with those targets, I think you can play him. And then some love for a wide receiver. Josh Reynolds. I mentioned Josh Reynolds as a sleeper on my last show, and he had a season-high 10 targets, 8 catches, and 94 yards. It was against Seattle, so, a grain of salt. But he's been pretty good over the past few weeks now. At least 44 yards or a touchdown in 5 straight games and at least 8 targets in 3 straight games as well. And I think this will continue as the Rams run out 11 personnel. We saw that towards the end of last season. Reynolds had more snaps than Robert Woods and 20 more than Cooper Kupp. I'm not saying to start Reynolds over Cooper Kupp, but I'm saying that Reynolds is a definite player in this offense. He's the deep threat guy. He has the most air yards, the highest ADOT on this team over the last 4 weeks. He's been getting involved quite a bit. Tough matchup against the Bucs this week, but, a borderline flex play, I think potentially you could get by with that. All right, so it's pretty much going to do it for this show. I will, on the way out, if your trade deadline has already passed, peace. Thanks for taking the time to hang out. I appreciate you. Rate, review, subscribe if you want in on some goods that we're going to give away in the next couple episodes of this show. But I had a couple people reach out with trades, so I just wanted to touch base on maybe potential trade targets for people out there who still have another 2 days to make trades. So you can check out my article over at ftnfantasy.com in more detail, but I'll go through this here kind of rapid fire for you out there who are maybe looking for a couple buy low players, or just you want to, I'm just going to give you the best possible matchups for quarterbacks and running backs and wide receivers throughout the playoffs. So we'll start at the quarterback position. These are the teams that I think have the best matchups at quarterback. The Chargers, they play Atlanta, Vegas, and Denver. Tampa Bay plays Minnesota, Atlanta, Detroit. And with Tampa on a bye week 13, I think you could potentially get Tom Brady. The window may have closed after that big monster game he had last week. We knew that was going to happen after prime time. He shit the bed and then he was unbelievable. We knew that was going to happen. He bounced back. He was unreal. But those matchups against Minnesota, Atlanta, and Detroit, phenomenal. Baltimore, they have at Cleveland, Jacksonville, and the Giants. And Lamar started to trend up at least 2 fantasy points more in his past 3 starts. So he's running a little bit more. Matchups are getting a little bit easier for him. And then the Rams with New England, the Jets, and Seattle. So Jared Goff, I wouldn't feel great about him being my quarterback one. He's more of a super flex guy. You have to be in a tough spot. I would feel better if he was your third quarterback as a depth piece, but depending on what kind of situation you're in, and if the Goff owner has two other quarterbacks, maybe you can go and get him. Those matchups are decent, but he did just play Seattle and he only had 10 fantasy points, but he had 300 passing yards. It's just the 3 scores that they had were rushing touchdowns. So that's why he didn't get the points, but he still threw for 300 yards. So I'd like those matchups, especially the Jets week 15 and then Seattle week 16. The worst matchups for quarterbacks, Minnesota has Tampa Bay, Chicago, and New Orleans. Buffalo has Pittsburgh, Denver, and New England. And with Buffalo on a bye week 13, I've been saying to sell Josh Allen. I'm trying to sell him myself. I'm trying to flip him for Justin Herbert. It doesn't seem to be working out. I'll probably just have to roll out Josh Allen week 14 in Pittsburgh. Don't love it. New England has the Rams, Miami, and Buffalo. Wouldn't be starting Cam in either of those games. Houston has Chicago, Indy, and Cincy. You're probably going to start Watson anyways, but Chicago and Indy, not great spots for Deshaun Watson. The best running back matchups through week 14 to 16. Tennessee has Jacksonville, Detroit, and Green Bay. You're probably not going to get Derrick Henry, but he could have a bit of a stinker this week, and maybe some people like to overreact. Green Bay has Detroit, Carolina, and Tennessee. I want to bring them up because Jones you're not going to get from anyone, but I wonder how much play Aaron Jones is going to get in those games, especially if it's looking like Green Bay has number 1 seed locked down. As of now, they have a bye. Jones isn't 100% healthy. He didn't get a ton of the work last week against Jacksonville. He was kind of on the sidelines wondering where he was. Matt LaFleur likes to rotate through his running backs at times. I think Jamal Williams could potentially be picked up. I think if you're a Jones owner, maybe you want to protect him. But even if you aren't a Jones owner, I think maybe you could get him for cheap, and just to have him, he could be a flex play against Detroit or Carolina in those spots because he's already shown that he could be an RB1 if there's no Jones, if Jones does suffer a setback or another injury. And he's proven before that he could be a flex play. It's a risky play, but if you're in a 14-16 team league, he's definitely a flex play. Cincinnati has Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville. Or Chicago, rather, has Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville. I can't sit here and tell you with confidence that you should feel confident to go and acquire David Montgomery. It's probably not the best of people to go after, but he probably will return next week. And against Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville, those are pretty good matchups. And this is a guy who's getting 85% of the snaps and who probably will just go back into that 85% snap range when he does return. The Colts have Vegas, Houston, and Pittsburgh. Again, another guy like Jonathan Taylor. Don't like him this week. I like a lot of these running backs. This is what it's come down to. Jonathan Taylor at one point was viewed by many as a top 10 running back the rest of the way when Marlon Mack went down. As of week 11 right now, these are the running backs that I have ranked ahead of Jonathan Taylor this week. Damian Harris, Duke Johnson, Giovanni Bernard, J.D. McKissick, Salvon Ahmad, Carlos Hyde, Adrian Peterson, Nyheim Hines, Chase Edmonds, Rex Burkhead. Those are all the backs that I have ranked ahead of Jonathan Taylor. But all of those backs I may not have ranked ahead of Jonathan Taylor by the time we get to week 14 or week 15 or week 16 against Vegas, Houston, and Pittsburgh. I'm not completely out on Taylor, but I'll tell you what, I really like Nyheim Hines. He's going to be a pain in Taylor's ass. And Frank Reich is rotating through some of these running backs. So I would only do it if you're looking ahead and you need a flex play. You need somebody to play as a flex week 14 or week 15, I think Taylor could be that guy. But if he's your RB2, no shot, no chance. And I think he's a buy low candidate in dynasty leagues. Absolutely, now is the time to go and get him. Running backs with the worst matchups for week 14-16. Minnesota has Tampa Bay, Chicago, and New Orleans. Not saying I would trade Dalvin Cook, but I probably would trade Cook for Henry. It's probably a move you don't need to make, but the matchups that's the slight difference to me that would, I'll have Henry ranked ahead of Cook maybe by one spot over those weeks, but you're probably getting a little bit too cute making that move. Houston has Chicago, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. Arizona has the Giants, Philly, and San Fran. Dallas has Cincy, San Fran, and Philadelphia. The best wide receiver matchups for week 14-16, the Rams, New England, the Jets, and Seattle. I don't think Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods could be had, but bit of down games last week. Now's the time. Actually, you know what? Well, your trade deadline's probably over. But with Tampa Bay this week, those aren't great matchups either for those wide receivers. And you could maybe be able to pull one of those wideouts away from the owner, knowing that they had a bit of a stinker and they could potentially have another stinker this week. The Jets have Seattle, the Rams, and Cleveland. Like Jamison Crowder probably won't cost you a lot, Brashard Perriman probably won't cost you a lot, but I won't like Perriman against the Rams, but I will like Crowder and Perriman against Seattle or Mims in deeper formats. Chicago has Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville. Really like Allen Robinson. Get yourself a signed mini helmet when you subscribe to FTN Fabcast, and get yourself Allen Robinson off the Allen Robinson owner, who's probably ticked off because they drafted him as a borderline top 7 wide receiver. He's coming off his worst game, and he's on bye this week. So now's the time to go and get him. Washington has San Fran, Seattle, Carolina. You only really want Terry McLaurin. You probably can't get him, but that's just news that you should hold, Terry. Baltimore, Cleveland, Jacksonville, and the Giants. Marquise Brown. What do you say about Marquise Brown? Again, flex play only. You just have to have solid, safe floor guys. I mean, you don't want to acquire Marquise Brown if you have a big boomer bust team because you're not going to win fantasy football matchup that week if they all go bust. But if he goes bust and your other safe floor guys do enough for you, boom. But if he blows up and you have those safe floor guys and you win your matchup, I'm telling you what, Marquise Brown owners don't want this guy anymore. They don't want to start him. They may drop him. Cleveland, Jacksonville, the Giants is pretty good. That's why I like Lamar. That's why I think maybe potentially Mark Andrews could be a buy for you as well. The worst matchups for wide receivers in the playoffs: Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Chicago, and New Orleans. I talked about Justin Jefferson and how his matchups were so darn juicy up until playoffs as Dallas this week. He just lit up Chicago last week, so it's not like he can't light them up again week 15, but he's going to have some tough corner matchups against Tampa Bay week 14 and New Orleans week 16. I'm not saying to trade Justin Jefferson. I think he's absolutely legit. I love him. I think he's a stud. But as I wrote in the article on Wednesday at ftnfantasy.com, I said, if you don't have a great balanced team, you have Justin Jefferson, he's your best wide receiver, or your second best, and you're rolling out a scrub at wide receiver 3 or a scrub at flex, you could, with Dallas on the schedule this week, knowing that he probably will have another 100-yard game, you could flip him for maybe 2 pieces. You can get yourself a wide receiver 3 and maybe a running back 2, or a wide receiver 2 and a running back 2, just a flex. If you can get a 2 for 1, I don't hate it. If it makes your team better as a whole, then I think you win. Like, add your projections up for the week. Are you at 97 with Justin Jefferson and you're at 105 with 2 players instead of Justin Jefferson? You have to look at it that way. It's all about context, so that's why it's tough here for me to roll through some of these trade targets for you, but doing it anyways and having a blast doing it. And if you've hung on, thank you. Atlanta has the Chargers, Tampa, and KC. Calvin Ridley's a little bit risky, but I think he could be had. I would bank on him playing in the playoffs. Seattle has the Jets, Washington, and the Rams. Don't think he can get anybody there, but just in case. These are bad matchups. My bad. I still probably would get Calvin Ridley up against the Chargers. Tampa's tough, but I like the Chargers and KC. Seattle has the Jets, Washington, and the Rams. Those are tough matchups, but you're rolling out DK anyways, even though DK didn't do anything last week against the Rams. But you get to week 15 or week 16 fantasy football championships, you're just playing them. New England has the Rams, Miami, and Buffalo. So that's why I was mentioning selling Jacoby Myers. I mean, if you need Myers this week, you play him. But if you don't, chances are, I mean, if you've been following anyone at FTN, we've been talking about this guy for 3 weeks. I have tons of shares of him. In some leagues, he's my best wideout. Now that's what I'm working with. Other leagues, he's my 4th or 5th. So it's possible he's your 4th or 5th. And if he's your 4th or 5th, move him right now. Especially with a juicy matchup against the Texans this week. And Hammer, his catch prop, it's only 4.5. Houston has Chicago, Indy, and Cincy, and Carolina has Denver, Green Bay, and Chicago. Been talking about selling these Carolina players, especially week 13 bye. Now Teddy's down, so you probably won't be able to do it. Rapid fire through these. I'd be buying Brady, be buying Jackson, be buying Carson Wentz as my second quarterback in Superflex leagues. Don't hate. Raheem Mostert, Jonathan Taylor, mentioned flex. Jamal Williams, cheap. Allen Robinson, Robert Woods, Chris Godwin, mentioned him on the last episode. I think he's the safest buck to own. A.J. Brown, like those matchups for Tennessee through week 13 to 15. Cleveland, Jacksonville, Detroit on the schedule. Solid matchups right there. The week before playoffs in the first 2 weeks. A.J. Brown, quiet last week, didn't do anything. Now's the time you go and get him, especially with Baltimore on the schedule this week. You go look at the A.J. Brown owner. They need A.J. Brown this week. That sucks because he's got Baltimore. If you don't need A.J. Brown really this week to get to the playoffs and you're just rolling, you have a bye potentially, or you know you're going to make the playoffs, you can get A.J. Brown maybe for cheap right now, and then you could roll him out come playoff time in those nice matchups. Jalen Reagor last week played a team high in snaps, ran the most routes, had the most targets. I think the gap is closing between him and Travis Fulgham. I tweeted that. It's the most love I've ever gotten on a tweet, 300 likes. A lot of hate. A lot of Philly fans out there saying that I'm trashing Travis Fulgham. They obviously don't know me and know that I cheer for the Birds. I like Travis Fulgham. This doesn't mean that I think Travis Fulgham sucks. And just because I say Reagor is passing Fulgham doesn't mean it's happened. Doesn't really even mean it's going to happen. But I think he's starting to trend up, and I think it is going to happen. And it also doesn't mean that I view Reagor as a wide receiver 1 and Fulgham as a wide receiver 75. They're basically the same in fantasy. Borderline wide receiver 3s and flex plays because Carson Wentz can't seem to get it together. But I believe in the weapons around Carson Wentz. I like the matchups. I think he can be a decent fantasy quarterback. Maybe not a good real-life quarterback this year, but a decent fantasy quarterback. He's been awful the past 2 weeks. But what I noticed from Reagor, as I mentioned, 57 snaps, 88%, both career highs. He was tied with Fulgham for snaps, but he ran more routes. Yes, James Bradbury was on Fulgham a little bit, but he was also on Reagor. 4 of Reagor's targets, Bradbury is on him. With the game on the line, the third down, Bradbury is on Reagor. It's starting to get some respect from people. It's easy completions for Reagor. He can be a deep shot, some bubble screens, get the ball to him in space. Doug Peterson hasn't done a whole lot of greatness this year in terms of his play calling, but I've noticed he's been creative with Reagor. I think they're going to start to get him involved a little bit more. I like Reagor more than Fulgham this week, but I only got a couple spots. The reason I tweeted that is because Fulgham's owned in like 20% of leagues, or Reagor's owned in 20% of leagues. He can be had. You can probably pick him up right now at the waiver wire. You can probably acquire him for cheap. I like him, honestly, the rest of the way. If you're in a standard league or a half-point setting, I will lean Fulgham. I think he's got higher upside to score a touchdown. He's a big body. Wentz really went his way when nobody was around. Reagor is healthy and active. Alshon Jeffrey's back. Played, by the way, over 40% of his snaps in the slot. 18 snaps in his return, 42% in the slot. Only played 8% of his snaps all year in the slot. He's not going to take anything away from Fulgham or Reagor. He's just going to be a guy that gets some snaps, maybe a couple catches a game in the slot. He's not a threat to take anything away. When Ertz comes back and Goddard's there, I think it helps out Wentz in the offense. There's a lot of mouths to feed all of a sudden. That's why Fulgham's taken that bit of a step back in terms of targets, and Reagor is just a guy to get the ball to in space, easy completions. Like I said, I think he's trending up. I like the schedule moving forward. Got a lot of heat for that tweet. Obviously, one guy was drafted in the first round. The other guy was drafted in the 6th round. It's not like first round picks can't be busts. N'Keal Harry, anybody? John Ross? Reagor can certainly be a bust. I don't think he's going to be a bust. Yeah, he's got a higher NFL ceiling, I think, than Travis Fulgham. They're different players. I don't want to compare them. They're very different players. From a fantasy standpoint, I just see Reagor trending up. Slightly more up, at least closing the gap between him and Travis Fulgham. Dynasty buys, I'll rapid fire through these. Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Austin Eckler, Zach Moss, Chris Godwin, CeeDee Lamb, Cortland Sutton, Kenny Golladay, Allen Robinson, Marquise Brown, Deebo Samuel, Mike Williams, Preston Williams, Deontay Johnson, probably won't get him. Juju Smith-Schuster, probably won't get him. It was a couple weeks ago was your time. Jalen Reagor, Henry Ruggs, Laviska Shenault, Denzel Mims, George Kittle, hurt. Mark Andrews, Mike Gesicki. So a lot of these guys hurt or rookies having down years. So just some targets out there. Any questions, you can hit me up at Chris Meaney. I would field offers for Justin Jefferson, Jacoby Myers, Jameis Winston, somebody could be desperate, Tua, Josh Allen, Chase Edmonds, Devin Singletary. Zach Moss has played more snaps in 3 straight weeks. Melvin Gordon, Jordan Wilkins, Kalen Ballage, Duke Johnson, and DK Metcalf. Jacoby Myers, I already mentioned. So a lot of these guys in tough spots, a lot of them are just 1 week, 2 week replacements. So if you have them, if you picked up Ballage and you don't really need them, take a look at that owner who is super desperate. All right, it's almost game time. Got to get out of here. Hopefully you were able to watch this show in time to get some picks. Any questions, hit me up. We'll be back this weekend with some more picks and some props and really just dive into some news, notes, and injuries. Enjoy the game tonight. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.